The silence begins. The galaxy had never known silence like this. For years, the Galactic Council had demanded Earth's surrender. They said humanity was reckless, too dangerous, too loud in the halls of power. They wanted Earth to kneel, to bow, to the rules of the greater species. And for years, humans answered back, sometimes with arguments, sometimes with laughter, and sometimes with defiance. But then, Earth stopped speaking. One day, without warning, every channel went quiet. No signals left Earth. No ships crossed their borders. Colonies went dark. Even the trade beacons that once blinked with human codes fell silent. At first, the galaxy laughed. In the grand chambers of the Council, the delegates of mighty empires mocked humanity's sudden quiet. Finally they break, one said, his scaled jaw curling in a smirk. Perhaps they realize they are too small to stand against us, another sneered. They hide like children, a third added. The great hall filled with arrogant laughter. To them, humanity's silence was weakness. But not everyone laughed. Few of the smaller races shifted uneasily. A merchant guild reported that their ships bound for Earth's colonies had disappeared. No distress calls, no debris fields, just gone. A patrol fleet sent to investigate never returned. The Council dismissed it all. Coincidence, they said. Accidents of war. They waved away the fear, refusing to believe silence could be dangerous. But deep in the void something stirred. The soldier ships of Earth had once been known for their noise, their open comms, their bold broadcasts, their warnings before battle. Now, nothing came from them. Not even a whisper. And still, ships vanished. A small scout vessel limped back one cycle later, its hull torn open by weapons the crew could not identify. The captain's voice shook as he made his report. We saw them, in the dark. Huge ships, no lights, no signals. They moved without sound. They fired without warning. They never spoke. The Council laughed again. Stories of frightened scouts, they said. Nothing more. But the image data was harder to ignore. Grainy recordings showed shapes, black against the stars, moving like shadows, blotting out starlight as they passed. The Council mocked the reports publicly, but in private, unease grew. Some whispered that humanity had built a fleet in secret. Others claimed Earth had died, leaving only ghosts. A few even said the silence was a trap. Still, no one dared say aloud what everyone felt. The silence was wrong. On Earth itself, cities still burned with light, but the world no longer spoke to the stars. Orbiting stations glowed faintly, silent, watchers against the void. Deep beneath the oceans and mountains, vast hangars opened slowly, releasing things long kept hidden. But no signal announced it. No warning was given. The galaxy waited for an answer from humanity. None came. In the great chamber of the Council, the debate grew heated. They are weak, one arrogant leader said, slamming his clawed fist on the table. This silence proves it. Let us take their worlds. But another spoke softly, her long antennae trembling. If they are weak, why do their ships not appear broken? Why does no wreckage drift in space? Why do they vanish whole? The chamber went quiet. No one had an answer, and still, Earth said nothing. Far away, in a lonely system on the galactic edge, a freighter captain sat at his console, staring into the void. His crew had just passed the border of human space. They had expected warning beacons, patrol scans, or at least a demand to turn back. But there was nothing. Too quiet, the navigator whispered. Moments later, the stars themselves seemed to shift. Black shapes slid across the void, massive and silent. No engines flared, no signals pinged. Only the sound of the freighter's own alarms filled the cabin. The captain tried to broadcast. This is a civilian ship, we mean no harm. But no answer came. The black ships glided closer, their size dwarfing the freighter. The crew held their breath. No weapons fired. No words were spoken. The silent giants simply watched. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they turned and vanished into hyperspace. The freighter limped back to council space, its crew pale and shaking. They swore humanity had become something else, something patient, something watching, and still, Earth said nothing. The silence grew heavier with every passing cycle. The council mocked it in public, but their voices rang less proudly. Merchants stopped traveling near human borders. Colonies whispered of dark fleets moving without warning. Even mighty empires began to wonder if arrogance had blinded them, because silence is not always weakness. Sometimes, silence is the sound before the storm. And as the galaxy mocked and as the council laughed, Earth waited, silent, unseen, and preparing. Mockery in the halls. The council chamber was louder than ever. Delegates from 100 worlds filled the great hall, their voices sharp, their laughter cruel. The silence of Earth had become their favorite joke. They hide like frightened animals, one delegate sneered, his fangs flashing as he spoke. They finally know their place, another added, her long tail curling smugly behind her. They thought they could stand against us. And now, nothing, not a word, not a ship, not even a whisper. The hall shook with mocking laughter. At the high table, the council leaders nodded with satisfaction. They saw Earth's silence not as danger, but as surrender. To them, humanity had given up, and in their pride, they were eager to claim credit. One elder counselor rose, his voice echoing across the hall. Let this be a lesson to all races. Defy the council and you too will fall silent. Humanity has chosen submission. Their arrogance is gone, and their silence is their defeat. Cheers rang out, thundering through the chamber, but not all were cheering. In the back rows, smaller species shifted nervously. Traders whispered to each other about ships that had vanished. Scouts who dared enter human space told stories of black shadows moving through the void, but none of them spoke too loudly. To question the council's story was dangerous. Still, fear grew. Late that night, in a side chamber, a group of delegates met in secret. They were from weaker nations, worlds without great fleets or strong armies. They depended on trade routes that passed near human territory. We must speak of this, one said, his voice trembling. My merchants vanish. Entire crews gone. No distress calls, no wreckage. Another nodded quickly. The same happened to us. A freighter entered human space last week. It never returned. They say it is raiders, a third whispered. But raiders do not move like ghosts. Raiders do not silence whole fleets. The room fell into uneasy silence. One delegate, older and braver than the rest, leaned forward. We all feel it. Something is happening in the dark. And the council laughs because they are too proud to see. Earth is not broken. Earth is waiting. The others shivered at the words. Back in the great chamber, the arrogance continued. Day after day, the council met, each session filled with new insults against humanity. They painted Earth as weak, cowardly, finished. Some even suggested dividing human colonies among stronger empires. Give their trade to us, one delegate demanded. They no longer use it. Take their worlds, another shouted. Why waste them? The greed in the room grew as the laughter rose. But beneath it all, unease spread like a shadow. The reports of missing ships were increasing. Patrols sent into human space were not coming back. Even fleets belonging to mighty races had returned battered, or not at all. Yet the council continued to laugh. One day, a scout stumbled into the chamber. His ship was damaged, his eyes wild with fear. He collapsed before the high table, clutching a recorder. We saw them, he cried. Silent ships, black as the void. They came from nowhere. They moved without sound, without signal. They tore through us. We couldn't fight. We couldn't even see them until it was too late. Gasps filled the hall. The delegates turned to each other in shock. But before fear could spread too far, a senior counselor rose. His voice was sharp, commanding. Lies, he declared. Stories from a coward who failed his duty. Humanity is broken, not strong. Do not believe these tales of ghost ships. Do not give power to fear. The scout tried to argue, but guards dragged him away. The council returned to its laughter, though it sounded thinner now, less certain, and still, Earth said nothing. The silence pressed on them like a weight. It was there in every meeting, every trade deal, every fleet report. The more they mocked, the more uneasy they became, because silence cannot be mocked forever. One by one, the smaller species began to wonder if the silence was not weakness, but warning, but the council was too arrogant to admit it. And so they laughed louder, mocking humanity, blind to the truth rising in the void. Because silence does not always mean surrender. Sometimes, silence is the sound of a blade being sharpened. Whispers in the void, the silence spread like a shadow. By the third month, the galaxy could no longer ignore it. Trade routes near human space were empty. Merchant ships that once carried goods to Earth's colonies had vanished. Patrol fleets, sent to investigate, did not return. At first, the council tried to cover it. They claimed pirates were to blame. They said the human colonies were dying on their own. But whispers began to move faster than their lies. In the cantinas of distant spaceports, captains leaned close, voices low. "I saw them," one whispered, his hands shaking. "Not ships. Shadows. They slid across the stars, blacker than the void itself. They made no sound, no signals, just death." Another leaned in. "A freighter in my convoy vanished. No explosion, no distress call. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Ghost fleets," someone muttered. "Human ghost fleets." The room went silent. Even the drunkest spacers did not laugh at the idea. In the outer colonies, fear grew stronger. Farmers looked up at the night sky and swore. They saw black shapes blotting out the stars. Miners in the asteroid belt spoke of silent weapons firing from nowhere. Children whispered stories of humans who had turned into shadows, striking without a word. No one admitted it openly, but everyone felt it. The silence was alive. In the council chambers, reports piled up. 2 more patrol fleets missing. Trade, in 3 sectors, collapsed. Merchants refusing to enter human space, the leaders argued. Some demanded stronger action, more fleets, more force. Others said it was only fear, that humans were finished, broken, gone. But then one day, a scout ship limped into orbit over the council's central world. Its hull was shredded, its engines failing, its crew pale with terror. The captain, barely standing, presented his recording. On the screen, the chamber saw them, black shapes drifting silently across the void. Their outlines were massive, larger than any council warship. They moved with eerie precision, gliding without sound, without comms, without warning. Then in a flash, beams of white fire erupted, cutting through the scouts' escort ships in seconds. The feed ended in static. The chamber erupted in chaos. "Impossible," one shouted. "They are ghosts," another cried. "They are humans," a third whispered. But the council refused to believe. Arrogance was a chain around their necks. "These are lies," they declared. "Tricks of frightened crews. Humanity cannot build such fleets. They are too small, too weak, too loud to master silence." And yet, the evidence was there. Far from the council, another whisper spread. The black ships did not attack colonies. They only struck military fleets. Merchants who turned back before crossing into human space were spared. The message was clear. Humans were watching, humans were waiting, and they had not forgotten the council's arrogance. A small diplomat from a minor world finally broke the unspoken fear. "What if silence is not surrender?" he asked quietly. "What if silence is their weapon?" No one answered him. Because deep down, every delegate in that hall already knew. Silence is not nothing. Silence is preparation. Silence is warning. Silence is the breath before the strike, and humanity had gone silent. That night, in the cold of space, another fleet approached the border of human territory. They expected resistance. They expected communication. They expected something. What they found was nothing. No signals. No broadcasts. Just empty space. Then, slowly, Stars vanished behind them, not because they moved, because something vast slid across the void blocking the light. Silent warships. Hundreds of them. The fleet captain shouted orders, but it was too late. Light ripped across the darkness. Missiles flew without warning. Ships exploded one by one, and not a single human voice spoke a word. The last transmission sent back to the council was short. A scream, a burst of static, and then silence. In the galaxy's taverns, in the colonies, in the council itself, the whispers grew louder. Earth has returned. Humanity is moving in silence. The council laughed, and now they will pay. No one laughed anymore. The void was no longer empty. It belonged to the humans now. And they spoke not with words, but with silence. And fire. The first strike, the G. Council could no longer hide the truth. Too many fleets had vanished. Too many scouts had returned broken and shaking. Whispers of ghost ships filled every port and colony. Yet the leaders of the great empires refused to admit fear. Their pride was heavier than their reason. So they made a choice. Send a grand fleet into human space. Not scouts, not patrols. An armada of their best warships, hundreds strong. They would crush whatever lingered in the dark and prove to the galaxy that the council still ruled. The fleet gathered on the border of human territory, their engines burning bright. In the command ship, Admiral Karath stood tall, his scaled face twisted with contempt. Humans are weak, he declared to his officers. They hide in silence because they are broken. We will remind them of their place. This war will end before it begins. The officers bowed. None dared question him. The armada entered human space. At first, all was quiet. No signals, no transmissions, no challenge. Just the empty void. The stars stretched endless around them, and the silence pressed. Heavy Admiral Karath sneered. See, they are nothing. They don't even dare speak. But then, the stars began to vanish. At the edges of their sensors, black shapes slid into view. Massive, silent. They blotted out constellations as they moved. No engine trails, no comms, just shadows drifting closer. The fleet tensed, weapons armed. The void grew colder. Karath barked, "Broadcast to them, demand their surrender." The comms officer tried. "This is the Galactic Council fleet. Identify yourselves." Static. No answer. "Repeat message," Karath ordered. Again. Nothing. The silent ships kept coming. Then the first strike fell. Without warning, beams of white fire tore through the void. Missiles streaked from the black shadows, slamming into Council. Cruisers. In seconds, 5 ships exploded, their wreckage spinning into the dark. Alarms screamed. The armada panicked. "Return fire," Karath roared. Weapons blazed, but their shots hit nothing. The silent ships were faster, weaving through space like predators. Their hulls absorbed scans, their weapons struck without trace. One by one, Council ships were torn apart, fire blooming like dying stars. Still, not a single human voice spoke. Inside one of the Council ships, a young officer clutched the console, his eyes wide with terror. "They don't talk," he whispered. "They don't taunt us. They just kill us." Another shouted, "Who fights like this? Who wages war without a word?" The answer was simple. Humans. In the command ship, Karath tried to hold the line. "Form ranks, push forward, they cannot be endless," but the shadows kept coming. More black ships appeared from hyperspace surrounding the fleet. No comms, no mercy, just silence and fire. Within hours, half the Council armada was gone. Karath's pride broke into rage. "Open a channel to Earth. Let them face me." The comms. Officer shook his head, sweat dripping down his brow. "There is nothing, Admiral. Earth does not answer." Another blast struck the command ship, shaking it violently. Karath gripped the console, his claws digging deep. "They are cowards. The words ended in a burst of light as his flagship exploded, swallowed whole by the silence. The survivors fled. Only a handful of ships managed to escape, limping back across the border, their hulls torn, their crews shattered. Their reports spread across the galaxy like wildfire. They never spoke. They never warned. They never answered. They just destroyed us. In the council chamber, panic grew. The arrogance of the leaders began to crack. They had sent their might, their best, their strongest, and it had been annihilated by fleets that spoke no words. Some still tried to deny. It was luck, they insisted. A trick, a trap. But most sat in silence, their faces pale, because deep down, they all knew. Humanity's silence was not surrender. It was power, and the first strike was only the beginning. Fear in the chambers, the council chamber no longer rang with laughter. The survivors of the Great Armada had returned, their ships broken, their crews haunted. Hundreds of warships had gone in. Only a handful crawled back. The reports were the same. Black fleets, silent as the void, striking without warning and vanishing just as quickly. For the first time in centuries, the council leaders sat in uneasy quiet. Pride and arrogance had been their armor, but now fear began to eat through it. A scarred officer from the failed armada stood before them, his voice shaking as he gave his report. "They never answered our hails," he said. "They never spoke. Their ships moved like shadows. We could not track them. We could not fight them. They killed us. And they never said a single word." His eyes burned with terror. "We thought silence was weakness. We were wrong. Silence is their weapon." The chamber erupted in shouts. "Impossible," one delegate cried. "They are only humans," another insisted. "This is madness, trickery, illusions," a third protested. But others stayed quiet, their faces pale. The weight of truth was too heavy to ignore. In the corridors outside the chamber, whispers spread among smaller species. The humans are building something greater. They do not waste words. They do not ask for mercy. They strike, and then they vanish. Who can fight such an enemy? Merchants refuse to enter human space now. Entire trade routes collapsed. Colonies on the border with Earth were abandoned, their people fleeing in fear of the silent fleets. The galaxy began to fracture, not from battle, but from dread. Inside the council, arguments raged. "We must strike harder," one leader demanded. "Send 3 armadas." Another slammed his clawed hand on the table. "And lose them all? You saw what happened." "They cannot be endless. If we push, we will break them." "You fool. They are already breaking us." The chamber fell into chaos. Shouts echoed. Blame was thrown back and forth. Then, a quiet voice spoke. It belonged to a delegate from a small, forgotten world. He had never been noticed before, but now every word carried like thunder in the silence. "You laughed at them," he said. "You mocked their silence. And in that silence, they prepared. You thought them weak, but you never understood what. Silence means to humans. It means patience. It means focus. It means they are ready." The chamber froze. In the following days, the council tried to hide their fear behind orders and speeches. They called for unity, for calm, for discipline. But behind closed doors, they argued like cornered animals. Some whispered of surrender. Others whispered of extermination. But no one had the courage to act, because no one truly understood how far humanity had gone. Across the galaxy, strange rumors spread faster than truth. A farmer on a distant colony swore he saw the night sky, covered with black ships blotting out the stars. A miner from the asteroid belts claimed entire stations disappeared, taken in silence by ghostly fleets. A freighter captain whispered that his convoy had been followed for days, silent warships always on the edge of his sensors, never attacking, only watching. Fear seeped into every corner of galactic life. Back in the council chamber, the debates grew desperate. One elder slammed his staff against the floor. "This cannot continue. If we show weakness, the galaxy will fall apart." Another snapped, "It already is. Trade is gone. Colonies flee, fleets are broken, and humanity says nothing." That silence, the silence that filled every report, every rumor, every dark corner of the galaxy, was more terrifying than any fleet or weapon. for the council had always believed in words, orders, threats, declarations, but humanity used none of these. They let silence do the talking, and it was working. At last, one truth settled in the chamber, though no one dared say it aloud. The council was losing, not to speeches, not to diplomacy, not even to fleets. They were losing to silence. That night, in the shadows of the galaxy, the black fleets continued to move. They did not speak. They did not warn. They did not answer. They only prepared, and the council, once so proud, so sure of its power, sat trembling in their halls, waiting for the next strike they could not see coming. The silent armada. The galaxy had grown used to whispers of ghost fleets, but no one was ready when the truth finally revealed itself. It began at the edge of council space. A small border world, quiet, unimportant, hardly more than farmland, looked up at the night sky and froze. The stars were gone. Not because clouds covered them, not because storms raged, but because something vast drifted across the heavens. Silent. Ships, hundreds of them, blacker than space, moving without light, without sound, blotting out constellations. Children cried. Farmers dropped their tools. The whole colony stood in the fields, staring upward as the sky itself seemed to close in. For the first time in living memory, they felt the weight of humanity pressing down on them. The reports spread fast. A mining station vanished. No distress. Call no escape pods, just gone. A council fortress world went dark, its defenses erased in minutes by weapons that came without warning. An entire fleet sent to protect a trade route was cut apart before it even fired a shot. The galaxy shook with fear, and still, the armada said nothing. No demands, no threats, only silence. In the council chambers, the leaders trembled. Maps of the galaxy lit up with red marks where ships had vanished, where colonies had been abandoned. This is not possible. One leader shouted, his voice cracking. They build fleets larger than ours in secret? How? No one answered. One counselor whispered what all feared. We mocked them. We laughed at their silence. And while we laughed, they prepared. A cold night, deep in council territory, the first true reveal came. The capital world of a mid-sized empire went dark. Satellites showed nothing but static. Patrol fleets rushed in to investigate. They found the sky filled with black dreadnoughts. The human armada hovered silently above the planet, so massive it looked like a wall of metal and shadow. No signals, no words, no chance to negotiate. The patrol fleets fired desperately, but their weapons scattered uselessly against the dark hulls. In reply, beams of white fire rained down. In minutes, entire fleets turned to wreckage. On the ground, millions of civilians watched their skies burn. The humans never spoke. They destroyed the defenses, crushed the armies, and then, just as suddenly, they left. The message was clear. You cannot stop us. Back in the council chamber, fear turned to chaos. They will erase us all, one delegate screamed. We must surrender, another cried. No, we must fight harder, others shouted. The chamber shook with arguments. Pride still burned in some, but terror now controlled the room, because the truth could no longer be denied. Humanity had not vanished. Humanity had not surrendered. Humanity had returned, silent, merciless, and stronger than anyone had dreamed. In the taverns and markets, the galaxy whispered a new name for them. The Silent Armada. Stories spread like fire. Some claimed the humans had built ships the size of moons. Others swore they moved faster than light itself. A few even believed they were no longer human at all, but shadows wearing human steel. None of it mattered. The truth was simple. No one was safe. And through it all, Earth remained silent. No broadcasts, no messages, no speeches to justify their war. They did not explain. They did not demand. They only struck, and then they disappeared back into the void. One council aide, shaking, as he read the latest reports, whispered to himself, Silence is worse than words. Silence means we cannot reason with them. Silence means they are already decided. Silence means they are coming. In the great hall of the council, the leaders sat pale and broken. The laughter of months ago felt like a curse now. Their arrogance had blinded them, and the galaxy would pay the price. For outside their walls the silent armada gathered, and everyone knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The price of arrogance. The council chamber was silent, not with pride, not with control, but with fear. Reports covered the great hall. Fleets gone, colonies burned, entire worlds left in ruins. And still, no message came from Earth, no declaration, no warning, just silence. The same silence that had begun months ago when the council mocked humanity's quiet retreat. The same silence they had laughed at. The same silence that now haunted them in their dreams. At last, the council called for an emergency assembly. Every empire sent its delegates. The hall was filled with trembling voices, sharp arguments, and desperate plans. "We must beg for peace," one cried. "No, we must build stronger fleets," another shouted. "Fleets?" A third spat bitterly. "We sent fleets, they vanished." The argument spun in circles, but none could deny the truth. Arrogance had blinded them, and now they faced a power they did not understand. Then, the skies over the council's capital world darkened. Every telescope, every sensor turned upward. In horror, the silent armada had arrived. Vast ships, black as the void, hung above the planet, blotting out the stars. They made no demands. They gave no orders. They simply drifted, silent, a wall of steel and fire waiting to fall. Panic swept the streets. Citizens fled to shelters, but no one truly believed there was safety. The shadow of Earth had come, and the galaxy's proudest world trembled beneath it. Inside the council chamber, terror exploded. "Contact them," leaders screamed. "Send a signal. Anything." Comms officers worked frantically, broadcasting every channel, every language. The only answer was static. The ships above did not reply. Finally, in desperation, the council sent a single message: "We were wrong. Humanity, forgive us. We mocked you, but we will yield. Please, speak to us." For long moments there was nothing. The silence pressed down heavier than the armada itself. Then at last, a transmission came. One voice. Human. Calm, cold, and final. "We were silent. Because you were never worth our words." The hall froze. Delegates stared at one another, faces pale, bodies trembling. Those words were not shouted. They were not filled with rage. They were quiet, steady, and absolute. The council had begged for dialogue, and humanity had given them truth. Above the planet, the silent armada moved. Dreadnoughts descended, their weapons glowing. The ground shook as beams of white fire rained down, not on civilians but on the great council fortresses, the fleets in orbit, the pride of empires. Arrogance burned in silence. The galaxy's rulers, once so mighty, could do nothing but watch as their power crumbled. Their laughter of months ago now returned to them like a curse. But then, the armada stopped. The weapons went dark. The dreadnoughts pulled back, rising once more into the void. They did not conquer. They did not enslave. They left the council alive, broken, humiliated. Humanity had made its point. Silence had been the blade. Silence had been the shield. Silence had been the punishment. In the days that followed, the galaxy changed. Merchants whispered that no one would challenge Earth again. Small species, once ignored, now looked to humanity with awe and fear. Even the great empires walked carefully, their pride shattered. The council survived, but their arrogance did not. They had laughed at silence, they had mocked humanity, and they had paid the price. On Earth, cities glowed in the night. People walked freely beneath the stars, knowing their fleets watched from the void. They did not cheer. They did not boast. They simply remained silent. Because the galaxy now understood. Silence was not weakness. Silence was the sound of humanity preparing. Silence was the storm before fire, and silence was the promise that the Council would never forget.